Camp at Nebraska reaches a milestone, and we've got an upcoming visit with the AD. All of it next.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good morning, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome in. It's Thursday here on the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Connor Happer from 1620 The Zone and Sherman from The Athletic. We drudge through. We continue to push through. I shouldn't say drudge through because we need to put things in perspective. The offseason is long, although not as long as some other off seasons. This one in particular for Nebraska.
Right.
But we are just a couple weeks away from the opener for Nebraska football. We have practice.
To be exact, right? It is August 7th. Yeah, 3 weeks from today.
3 weeks exactly from tonight, which will be a late night at Arrowhead Stadium for folks. We got to find a way to somehow, some way squeeze in some kind of podcast, by the way, that weekend. I don't know how we're going to do that.
Yeah, we'll strategize around that. It's going to be a late night. I'm
Yeah.
sure we'll have a Friday morning podcast. We may have to.
Oh, might be tricky.
We have to do something different with the mailbag that week. So let's start strategizing there.
Yeah. All right. That's just a good note for all of us. But we should appreciate that we're here right now, and there's still a whole bunch left to be decided with Nebraska football as far as who's going to play and all those things. But so anyway, we're just a couple weeks away from the first game. But in order to break up some of the 3 weeks, in order to break up the monotony of camp and all the camp talk and who's good and who's going to start and all those things, Troy Dannen is going to stop by on Friday. Troy Dannen, the Nebraska, Troy Dannen, the Nebraska athletic director. He's going to stop by,
Mr. Dannen,
and update us on a variety of different things. I'm excited to see where that conversation goes, Mitch.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like a state of the Husker Nation, I think. I mean, Troy Dannen hasn't had a lot. This is not like Trev Alberts was always available pretty much whenever you needed him, and then some other times when you didn't need him. And Troy Dannen, he plays it a little more behind the scenes. I think in his first year at Nebraska, he made more public comments just because it was a time of transition and people were trying to get to know people. People were trying to get to know him. But since March, he passed his 1 year anniversary as the Nebraska AD, and we really haven't heard a lot from Troy Dannen. Like, he just kind of does his thing behind the scenes, and that's relatively normal for an AD. But for the couple years before that, we had gotten used to the boss being like the guy carrying the mic, and like he was doing the interviews, like almost
That's
Matt
true.
Rule style. That was Trev. That's not Troy. Troy will be in the media room early on Friday as Nebraska hits the practice field. I think several people in the press, including myself, have made requests to visit with him. Usually this happens at Big Ten Media Days. Almost always the athletic director travels with the team to Big Ten Media Days. But because Nebraska was up on day 1 of 3 in Las Vegas and the AD meetings were not until the end, Troy was not there for Nebraska's day in front of the cameras. He sent Haven Fields, who is like the hands-on, like the day-to-day guy with everything related to Nebraska football. Very, very capable. Like, he's, unless it's a thing that requires the athletic director's attention, then Haven Fields is dealing with it from an administrative standpoint and has a great rapport with Matt Rule and the players. So this is the first chance to get the AD since revenue sharing went into effect on July 1st, and since we got a ruling on roster limits and all kinds of stuff that's just relevant to running a major athletic department. So I'm looking forward on Friday to being able to ask some questions. What's on your mind when it comes to the boss?
I'm sure the topic will be revenue sharing. But in my opinion, I just don't know how much you can learn after it being in effect for 5 weeks. You know what I mean? Like, you kind of had your plan that you were set out on for a long, long time now. And I'm sure that there were some adjustments along the way, but you're basically just trying to start to enact that plan right now. So in a year or in 6 months, maybe that's a more interesting, you get a more interesting answer to some of the roadblocks they've run into or the speed bumps, whatever it might be. So for me, it's not that, although I'm sure it'll be the topic. For me, it's Memorial Stadium.
Okay.
I want to see, and I don't know, maybe this is an inappropriate like setting to talk about this, or maybe he doesn't have an update, at all at this point. But I am curious to see how that project is moving along. What stage are we in? How close are we to, eventually a shovel hitting the ground somewhere in Memorial Stadium? I can't wait to see when that starts, and I want to hear it from the AD.
I think it's an entirely appropriate subject and topic to bring up tomorrow. There, at some point, is going to be a proposal for the whole grand plan that Troy Dannen is sending to the regions, and it could be in September, as soon as September, when the regions vote on whether to appropriate hundreds of millions to go toward the removal of the South Stadium and the renovation of really just about everything. I mean, they've already done the red end zones, so everything else is downhill after that, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, I want to see what's different about the plan that Dannen is going to put forth compared to the Trev plan, for lack of a better word, I guess. I want to see exactly what that looks like. It seems like the way he talks about it, if anything, it may have grown in scope.
Yeah, it's all. I think it's always, honestly, like if we have a project like this, it doesn't get smaller. It doesn't get smaller like as the day gets closer to when construction begins. I'm not super interested with Troy Dannen in hearing about food offerings inside Memorial Stadium this fall, but somebody's going to ask. I mean, everybody, just like as a warning. They are selling runzas. We get runzas. You get Fairbury hot dogs and Valentino's. It's all there. Like everything else is just fine. Show me what they got. There'll be some talk about beer sales. I think with rev share, the big thing that I would like to ask is about how they go about the process of determining which sports get X amount of dollars. I don't think he's going to come out and say we're appropriating this year in the first 12 months of rev share. He's done everything he can to say, I don't have to do that.
Yeah. So no, we're not going to do that.
But I think like walking us through the process of how they come to those decisions is good. And
agreed.
The conversations that he has with coaches, does it involve other administrators? What about like performance of the sports in general? Like Nebraska wrestling finished second in the NCAA championships last year. So is that going to mean that they just earn themselves $500,000 of rev share money to distribute among the best returning wrestlers, or to go into the portal and find somebody who can contend for a championship to put them over the top this year? Like, I think that's a very real discussion that you have, but like, you can't necessarily do that with every sport. I don't know how that comes down with, say, track and field. There's a limited number of sports that are going to get money from that 20 million. And at the top of the list, of course, is football, men's basketball, volleyball, women's basketball. And then it's all just kind of subjective. Some schools actually are not going to give money to women's volleyball, but Nebraska, as we'll talk about in the second segment, is in a completely different case in comparison to those. So lots to discuss with Troy on Friday. Before we get to the first break, I wanted to mention that today, Thursday, is the 10th practice of preseason camp. So on the books, Nebraska has 25 scheduled practices in camp, including the walkthrough that's going to be in Lincoln before the Huskers travel on Wednesday, August 27th to Kansas City. And then there are 2 flex days that are kind of TBA on the practice schedule. They could go up to 27 or they could stay at 25. But as of right now, like, they're 40% of the way through preseason camp. There will be a scrimmage on Saturday, presumably Saturday, at the stadium. And Matt Rule is going to talk after that. So that's a big milestone in camp. I think today's a milestone at the 40% mark. Why not? Like, let's just make an arbitrary number. So what are the most notable things through camp at the 40% mark right now for you, Connor? Like what's the biggest thing you think you've learned about this team?
Oh man.
Put you on the spot.
Yeah. Well, when you ask what I've learned, I immediately think to like, personnel stuff. And man, I just don't know if there's anything unexpected, anything that I didn't know going into camp. I don't know that there's been this huge flip for anybody's jumped anyone in the first 10 practices. Maybe it's hard to do so anyway. But I will say this, I feel better about the team than I did 10 practices ago. I like the way it sort of rounds into form. It feels like they have depth at enough positions and enough talent at enough positions to where they can win some games. But I don't know that's not from a specific thing.
Sometimes this conversation just takes you back to like all of the same things that we generally talk about when it comes to, all right, let's talk about the running back depth. Let's talk about questions on the defensive line. So I want to go in a different direction because we talk enough about that stuff. And just say, like, I feel after hearing over the last week from Dana Holgorsen and John Butler, better or maybe just a little bit different, like more comfortable in my assessment of the team in saying that the two coordinators have a complete handle of everything that's going on with the offensive and defensive player groupings.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, there's not a doubt. Like when John Butler was promoted, you remember the talk through last December about what Nebraska was going to do at the defensive coordinator spot. When Tony White left, there were all kinds of names thrown out there. Should they get this guy? Should they get this guy? And then when Matt Rule made the choice to promote John Butler, there were some in Nebraska circles who said, could they have gotten somebody with more experience? Could they have gotten somebody with a bigger name? And I think John Butler through the spring and the opening 40% of camp has shown us that like he is a good fit for Nebraska on defense to bring the kind of attitude and mentality that Matt Rule wants to play with.
I think it's a good takeaway. Yeah, it's more of a broad thing, but I do like the fit of all those pieces of the puzzle so far. Now we just have to wait the extra 3 weeks just to see if they can actually make it work in real life games.
Yeah. All right, let's take a break and we'll come back and we'll talk about that other sport on campus, the best team on the Nebraska campus, and all that's going on. A ton happened Wednesday in the sport of volleyball in the state of Nebraska, and a lot of it had connections to Lincoln. Let's discuss that when we come back.
But first, a word from our friends at the FanDuel Sportsbook, where summer sports are happening. We're just a few weeks away, as we mentioned, from football, but there's still opportunities for you to find your edges with golf, with baseball, with soccer, whatever it might be. So if you're already following the action, we know that you're a sports fan. Why not make it a little bit more thrilling with the FanDuel Sportsbook when you can get in on the game while your friends are, who knows what they're doing? They're playing golf, but you are finding edges everywhere. Like it's a light slate tonight for Major League Baseball, but you could look at a whole bunch of different options on ways that you could bet Paul Skeens start against the Cincinnati Reds tonight. There's a whole tab for it right now live on FanDuel.com. So head over there, get involved in the action tonight in the minimal slate there is in Major League Baseball. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or head to FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started.
Welcome back. Segment 2, Thursday episode of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. If you have a question for us in our mailbag, now is the time to get that in. We will be recording the mailbag episode somewhat soon to publish on Friday morning. The email address is lockedonneb@gmail.com. Of a verdict on the lip-smacking situation.
Did you watch the tape?
Well, I haven't reviewed the tape because I don't think there was a need to. I went through the YouTube comments after we brought up this wild accusation from Alex that I smack my lips too much during the show. And this made me very paranoid to the point where it was difficult to speak yesterday as we recorded. And many chimed in, thank you, in the YouTube comments after Wednesday's show. And there were a couple people who, like, I don't know, went through the show and found like a moment where, like that happened. And sorry, but I'm not overly concerned about that.
But there was more people who said, all right, everyone does it. This is a podcast. It's a free flowing thing. You're fine. And I agree with those people.
Alex kind of got called on the carpet a bit.
Sometimes there's like a dog in the background or something like that. It happens. You can't help it.
Yeah, so it's not a big deal. People don't seem to care too much. It's not something that's bothering our listeners. And that's really what I wanted to make sure, that this isn't bothering people as they listen to the show or watch the show. So everything seems to be cool. We're going to go back to normal. And I will when I take a drink of my coffee here, I will kind of back away.
Lip smacking gate is ending.
Yeah, there. I think that's a lesson to be learned from this. I'm not gonna slurp my drink into the microphone here.
Yeah.
All right, we got more important stuff to address. I was gonna wait until Monday to tackle this subject because the Nebraska volleyball team has its red-white scrimmage. We'll have more football in the third segment, so stick with us. The Nebraska volleyball team is going to play its red-white scrimmage Saturday night at the Devaney Center. So I thought, hey, I'm going to go watch. We can discuss this on the show Monday. And then Wednesday happened, and we got absolutely slammed with an avalanche of volleyball news. And in this discussion, we cannot bury the lead. John Cook is back. The Nebraska coach who retired in January, he is no longer retired. He took up the cowboy lifestyle, and 7 months was enough. So he's coming back to be the general manager and a co-owner of the Omaha Supernovas professional team that has played 2 seasons in downtown Omaha. The Supernovas just announced this week a new head coach with national team experience, and they also are playing in 2026, which was perhaps a question because the league that the Omaha Supernovas announced that they were going to join had no other teams until there was a merger announced this week between the Supernovas former league and their new league. And the new league is called Major League Volleyball. And they're all going to try to have this model of like NBA type teams. So there was a need for a general manager, and that is John Cook.
Yeah, it's fascinating. We got the sense when Cook retired, it was like, it was even on the graphic, right? It was like, the cowboy rides off into the sunset. He's gone, going back to the ranch, and he's going to really just enjoy his time. And obviously, I don't think it's quite as, labor intensive as running a college volleyball
Certainly
program.
not.
Like Nebraska, he could do it from kind of wherever, but I imagine he'll be back in Omaha quite a bit.
Yeah.
So it's pretty surprising, I guess. I mean, I think if you're a Husker volleyball fan and you saw this yesterday, you're kind of like, what in the world is going on here? I think that's an appropriate reaction.
Couple things. One, this tells me, and I'm reading into this, but this tells me that a bigger part of his decision to retire than he let on at the time in January had to do with a concern that the window would close on getting Danny Busboom Kelly if Cook would have maintained, just continued in that spot for 3-4 more years. Danny had a baby this spring, and you really get entrenched, with multiple kids. And she played for a national championship last year at Louisville.
Louisville into a powerhouse, right? Like, how much further down the road do you go before they just are Nebraska? You know what I mean?
Exactly. So Cook, I think, saw that, and he saw it at the Final Four when they were there in Louisville, and Danny hosted the Final Four, and there was a part of him, I think, that even if he wasn't 100% ready, which seemingly he was not ready to just become a cowboy and live on the ranch, he felt like he needed to do what was best for the long-term future. And also, we just got done talking about this upcoming visit with Troy Dannen and like the things that he's dealing with. I don't know how crazy John Cook was about dealing with revenue sharing.
Yep.
I mean, for somebody who's been in the business for decades, the way that he has and operated his program a certain way, and he was as good as you get for somebody in his 60s at adapting with the times. Like that one that he was going to be dealing with this July, if he'd still been in that chair, is a different level of adaptation. So the time was right in some ways, in a lot of ways, and we get more John Cook. Also, the other pro team in Omaha is now going to be co-owned by Jordan Larson, who was Cook's assistant and one of his greatest, maybe his greatest player of all time. So like a little in-town rivalry. They're in separate leagues. This is the Love Omaha team, which is rebranded as Love Nebraska, play in League One volleyball, hence the Love name. And the new director of business operations for that team, kind of the GM, is none other than Kirsten Bernthal Booth, who, if you watched last year when Nebraska and Creighton played, these were the two head coaches on the sidelines of top 10 programs, top 5 programs at the state's two major Division I power institutions. And now they're running the pro teams in the state of Nebraska. What a crazy difference a year has made there. I know you know Kirsten well from your dealings with Creighton volleyball, and great to see that she has a role. It had been announced previously that she would be with League One, but now she has an official role with League One Nebraska.
And just to put this on people's radar, because we're not that far away from it, we're going to see a volleyball spectacle on September 16th in Omaha. It's Nebraska.
Nebraska going to CHI. Yeah.
Nebraska going to CHI. I think Creighton has gotten some really good response on their season ticket holders gobbling up tickets for that game. And it'll be a showcase. I'm sure, right? John Cook and Kirsten Bernthal Booth have to be there. It's some capacity.
Yeah, they have to be there scouting for their respective pro teams. Like they're the GMs, they're the whatever business.
Not wearing red or blue, but wearing their professional organization quarter zips and colors and stuff like that. So what a difference a year can make. There's going to be 2 new coaches for those programs who are going on as strong as they have ever been. Nebraska's preseason number 1, Creighton's preseason number 12. And the former coaches are still involved in volleyball, which makes a lot of sense when you think about it, because those 2 are excellent, stewards and ambassadors for the game.
Yeah. The last thing on volleyball, as you said, Nebraska number 1 on Wednesday in the preseason coaches poll. So nice deal for Danny Busboom Kelly to come in and you're number 1 in the country before you've ever coached a match. It seemed like it's not a problem for her. She talked about it on Wednesday in a previously scheduled press conference in Lincoln, and she said, "Yeah, I expected that we were going to be number 1. In fact, I voted us number 1, and we're not gonna spend. She's like, we have a really good team, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about that with the players, because I think they understand that it doesn't mean anything in that quest to be number 1." In December. So number 2 is Penn State.
Mitch would choose to play games. They'd be like, you know what? I'm gonna push at number 3 just to see if I can.
She's
razz him up a little bit. No,
Danny will find, as we'll find out this year, it does not lack for confidence or swag, whatever, with anything that she does. And I in looking at the way Nebraska put together its roster this offseason, I had. The thought had gone through my mind that the quest that she was on was to be the best at every position on the court, which is quite a lofty goal. And that led her to go sign the opposite hitter from Italy when they already had players at that position, somebody with multiple years of professional experience, probably a future national teamer for what is the best international team in the world right now. And Danny validated that in talking about Nebraska's setter position and the opposites. Basically, they're trying to be the best, not just the best team, but the best at every position on the court, which is something to watch. Nebraska opens 2 weeks from tomorrow, August 22nd at PBA against Pitt, which was the most talented team in the country last year, but lost to Danny Busboom Kelly and Louisville in the national semifinal. So she's very familiar with that roster, being a former ACC rival of the Panthers. All right, that's our volleyball for the week. Maybe we'll have a mailbag question about volleyball, but we'll be back with more observations and analysis of things as the fall goes along. When we come back, something coming out of Iowa on Wednesday that got our attention. That is next.
All right, welcome back. Is something brewing in Iowa City?
Mm-hmm.
It is camp after all. We're 2 weeks down, 10 practices, about 8 to 10 or 12 practices for these teams. And this is about the time where you start seeing some things and hype and Kool-Aid and videos. And, Nebraska puts one out daily that people just put under a microscope and,
yep.
and they're like, did you see what that? Like Ja'Cory Barney made some great catches in a video that they put out the other day.
A 3-second clip.
Ja'Cory Barney is going to be awesome this year. Right?
Look at how that running back moved, and then you have to go. If you have to go to the roster, here's a general rule that I apply. If I have to go to the roster and like call it up to figure out who that is, then it's probably not as important as I'm making it out to be in my mind.
Iowa put out. I just lip smacked. Iowa put out a video of this is a shorts and pads and helmets practice. No leg pads here, so it's a half shell deal. And it's Mark Gronowski, their quarterback, rolling out to his right and finding. I believe this is Jet Award winner Caden Wetjen.
Yeah, the great special teams player who's a big time receiver now for the Hawks.
Toe tapping on the sideline, a perfectly placed throw by the transfer quarterback from South Dakota State. And this has sent Iowa City and the greater state of Iowa into a frenzy. What would happen if Iowa was exactly like it always was, just with a really good quarterback that can make some plays? What do we think about this, Mitch?
Yeah, the reaction was awesome. Like the reaction of other college football fans to Iowa fans getting excited about a short pass completion in practice was hilarious. You want to go into the comment sections on this one, and many people reposted the quarterback's throw, Gronowski's throw. Great, very good quarterback. Like Gronowski had an incredible year at South Dakota State last year, and I think by a lot of accounts is going to bring a legitimate throwing threat to the Hawkeyes, which they've lacked for a number of years. But for me, it's just the give and take, the back and forth. Like Iowa's not doing anything that other schools aren't doing. Like they're not breaking ground here. Like there is not real reason to like mock them for putting a video of the quarterback completing a pass on social media. Nebraska does this.
It's not a reason to not put it out. That's for sure. Keep putting it out.
But it's just bait for people who are like, wow, did you see that? They can actually throw the ball. I just found a lot of humor in this. And let's talk about like the prospect of Iowa having a quarterback who is effective in running an offense that the forward pass is featured in, and what that might mean for the rest of the Big Ten.
Based on what I've seen from Gronowski, watching him a few times at South Dakota State, I think the interesting thing about him is not necessarily that he just adds this throw game to it, because they've had some quarterbacks who have had really, really good arms, and they won a lot of games with them. Nate Stanley and Spencer Petras and those guys, while they didn't have the greatest stats in the world because it's difficult because the only time they're throwing is in 3rd and 8. They had really good arms.
They were running Brian Ferentz's offense.
Right. It was difficult for them. But the thing that's interesting about Gronowski is I think he possesses some playmaking ability that maybe his predecessors haven't had, meaning he can make some plays in the pocket, get time to get more people open and then make a throw on the run or something like that. It doesn't have to be on time. He brings an element of off time, which I think is a good thing for a quarterback if you can get people off there.
You have to go all the way back to CJ Beathard, I think, to find an Iowa quarterback who was adept at both throwing the ball and getting out of the pocket and being a threat. Even if Gronowski is not going to run for many yards, the ability to throw on the run and to not be a statue is something that's going to serve them very, very well, because they're going to be able to run the ball. They're going to play good defense and special teams. And if you add in that third element that's been lacking, then I think you have to reevaluate like what Iowa could be this year. Iowa to me is in that category of teams that's like in the middle of the Big Ten right now, like before we fully go wild over this video that was posted on Wednesday and like make huge assumptions that we won't know are true until the Hawkeyes get out there and play, say, Iowa State in September. But if you just want to jump the gun here, like Iowa is a team with all of the rest of its arsenal that should be probably getting more legitimate conversation as like the fringe of the playoff than, say, Nebraska and some others, just because of what Iowa's done in recent years in coming close to having a complete team, winning more games. And there's no reason to believe that like there's going to be a step down there. There's still some All-American candidates on that roster.
I will
Nebraska
say this
doesn't have.
Yeah, no doubt. I will say, and they're going to be able to run the ball, like you said, which gives you a floor right away. But I will say, Gronowski, while I think I wonder why Iowa hasn't been setting it up like this for a long time. Get a quarterback that could kind of, he might not have the strongest arm in the world, might not be a future NFL guy or whatever it is. Although, I think there was some draft buzz about him last year, as we were told by David Ubben. But
yes.
I wonder quarterbacks. I always wonder why they didn't set it up like this in the first place. When Rule got here in his first year, I got the sense that they were trying to be like Iowa, just with a quarterback who could run and Jeff Sims. And obviously that turned out to be a huge dumpster fire because he couldn't stop turning the ball over. With that being said, Gronowski is a giant wild card in the conference. He's a huge wild card. If he's really good, then Iowa's probably really good. If he's fine, then Iowa probably wins 8 games like they always do. If he's bad, then I don't know what happens, right? They probably still have a floor in that regard. He's one of many quarterbacks in this conference that you just haven't seen play at this level, and you wonder how good or how bad it could be.
So this serves as our check-in on Iowa in August. We'll finish this just by, I want to look at their schedule and what kind of a runway is Gronowski going to have to get up to speed. And it's pretty nice in the sense that 3 of their first 4 games, they play Albany, and I think there's multiple pronunciations there. And then they go to Iowa State, which is a huge test on the road, no less. And then UMass comes to Iowa City. And the first game in the Big Ten is at Rutgers. So Rutgers, solid team, but the things are going to get tougher from there. So Iowa's got Indiana, Penn State, and Oregon, all coming to Kinnick. So that's favorable in the sense that 3 of the best teams, maybe the 3, I don't know, I put Indiana among the 3 best, but could be it could turn out that way. It would have been last year. Like the 3 playoff teams from a year ago on Iowa's schedule are all coming to Kinnick Stadium. And then they go to Wisconsin. They have Minnesota at home, USC in the Coliseum, Michigan State at home. And the Hawkeyes come to Lincoln this year.
What a great
interesting schedule. Yeah, it's a great home schedule. Yeah, if you're a ticket holder, yeah, for sure. If you want to hawk your tickets as a Hawkeye, it's a good year to do that because those games against Oregon and Penn State for sure are going to be hawking some big bucks.
Nice. Well done. All right. That's it for us today. You have minimal time to get your mailbag questions in. If you haven't done so yet, we're going to record that on Thursday evening. Appreciate you making Locked On Nebraska your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Portal Show with Brian Smith and find that on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.